occupier. Then it's a case in Khammam where the the two tribal families for 10 acres in Palvancha, they have to struggle for 22 years in spite of a favorable adjudication. Present officers refuse to enforce old order. Sir, it is 1984 order. How can I implement today? Then nobody knows why not. Nobody fights for it. And when paralegals struggle to secure justice from High Court, they have to keep a wonderful whistle in High Court, file that caveat petition, and see that no stay is granted. You know, the High Court can grant stay on anything. There was one interesting case where a woman struggled to get a divorce from her harassing husband. After 9 years, she got the divorce. She was about to marry another person, and the High Court granted a stay. You can imagine what will happen. They got it back at very high cost and huge delay. Of course, even though they got it back, it is at a very high cost. Then Bhadrachalam study in 1990 proved that not even 10% of LTR violations are recorded as crimes, are noticed by the court, are taken as complaints. The situation must be more serious now. Mankubai is another example my friend very, very frequently cites as a story which reflects the success, at the same time the tragedy of delay. 34 years. I don't know who will have such a sagacity and capacity, money to fight for a piece of land for 34 years. Then Samata judgment, which is regarded as one of the great judgments of Indian Supreme Court. But wonderful thing in that judgment is 90 pages of fantastic description of tribal rights goes out with 10 pages which are not noticed by anybody except by the government. The judgment leaves a fantastic loophole through which you can transfer entire tribal land, and that is this. Intergovernmental transfer is not treated as transfer at all. So you have prohibited the transfer. And I am saying it is not even a transfer. That's all. The whole judgment is useless. Then government is very happy. It can continue its activities as if there is no injustice or judgment that stops them from doing it. That is the situation. The Revenue Department transfers it to APIDC, and you know APIDC, it is totally engulfed in scandals. Today you have plenty of tons of files with being dragged into courts of law by that Lakshmi Narayana. He's a popular man in Andhra Pradesh because he brought to book all these persons. Now, do you know what is his situation? He's waiting for posting for the last 1 year. Then it is transferred to non-tribal corporations or companies. Government is the biggest offender. Tehsil laws and other revenue staff do not look into cases of agricultural land taken by the government prior to judgment. They say even otherwise they don't implement the judgment. Forget about the transfers made by the Revenue Department to APIDC and APIDs to corporations. Other lands which are under occupation by other departments, government tackling it, they don't just look into it. They say, from this date we use the judgment. Nobody said it. Nobody directed it. Then thousands of acres are under occupation of non-tribals through government. Not even a single acre of land was given back to tribals by the government after the judgment. Now they come out with GOs. Very, very clever GOs will come up. You will not find on the face of it that this GO is in contradiction of the judgment of Supreme Court. GO is freely available and they can produce it. Any number of copies can be produced. But judgment, 100-page judgment, very difficult to produce and very difficult to understand. Even judges sometimes find it difficult to understand the judgment unless they read the head notes. And the judgment supplied will be supplied without head notes. Now, who will interpret it? Who will understand it? So you implement GO, which is in contradiction of a judgment, which nobody knows. Even if I produce a copy before you, you can't understand it. Mystery of language, mystery of legalese, and everything. And officers do not give any value to judgment of Supreme Court. You know how that, what is that judgment? Salva judum. It's totally finished within few minutes. So it doesn't serve any purpose except people like me We'll enjoy the language and the analysis, fantastic presentation of facts of the case, and very humane touch given by the judge. But nothing happens out of that. It's a complex problem. Where law is there, they kill it in implementation. Where there is no law, there is no problem. Lack of awareness about rights among tribals is the main issue. Combination of inefficiency, lack of knowledge of tribal rights among officers. Tribals do not know, I understand. Even officers do not know. Is another major problem from government officer. But there is another fatal combination. Highly efficient officer and highly corrupt. And that combination is very fatal. Nobody can help the country from them. Corruption coupled with efficiency of officers and leaders is fatal for rights of tribal and of course for democracy also. Problem is bad governance. It is either no governance or bad governance, but never a good governance. Especially with reference to land and rights of tribals. Of late, some NGOs also developed vested interests. They gain some publicity initially, then they leave unorganized tribals and they join with their enemies. And finally, it is real estate. All the three estates, executive, legislature, and judiciary, including fourth estate media, they are after real estate. For them, state means an estate. The Telangana is also stopped, by those who are very much interested in lands in Hyderabad. That's all. The only consideration is real estate, not the state. Rights are there on paper, but ground is occupied by wrongdoers. Law is for tribals, but land is for grabbers. State machinery supports land criminals. Then what is the solution? Awareness issue is the major issue. Land records, in whatever shape they are, don't say that we will regularize it, we will resurvey it, then we give. Then you will never give. So give them whatever they are, whatever shape they are in. Let the people have access to them. Those who know their rights and have access to land records can question the state. Create these two situations. Solution lies in creating awareness about law and rights besides opening up the land records.
I think that was a fairly dismal picture that we have been given, both of the law where either it's not implemented or the law is speaking with double tongue or triple tongue. That is always a escape clause that renders it useless. Anyhow, it was I think 4 altogether excellent presentations here, so quite broad in orientation, I think, from the very empirical political work that Rava is doing to our 2 legal presentations, or the efficacy or maybe the uselessness of law as it not being acted on, and finally I think the economic reasoning that we heard from Professor Mamidis. So I think just I open up the floor for questions, as we have about little more than half an hour to go, so please.
Thank you. Those were excellent presentations. I have questions for Ravi and also for Pavan and Professor Sridhar Acharyulu. So for Ravi, on the bauxite mining, because you were talking about how you've been able to convince, the strategy has been to convince the community, but also the industry. And to some extent, you think that with the current Minister of Tribal Affairs, that has been a fairly successful strategy, if I was right in understanding that. But then I think when Dr. Shastri was presenting, we were talking about this other project where 276 villages are also being affected, which is not a bauxite project, and where the government, where the Ministry of Tribal Affairs has not played a similar role. So I was just hoping, and because of your work on the steering committee and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs in general, because it's a new ministry, it hasn't been around for, I think, maybe 15-20 years or so just reflect upon your work with the ministry and how much, because we know that not all ministries are equal, and power is not equally distributed even within that. So how much voice or say does the Ministry of Tribal Affairs have, and what are the reasons why you're able to convince them on bauxite and not on the other things? And I think my second question is, on like so Pavan, from your presentation, because you were talking mostly about assigned lands, which is about scheduled castes and not so much scheduled tribes, right? And I just wanted to understand this because I actually interviewed an IS officer who's currently doing his masters in public administration at Harvard, and he was explaining to me the law relating to assignment and then the law in the tribal areas. And I was wondering, to what extent are the interests of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes in Andhra Pradesh aligned or different from each other? In other words, is it also the case that in some cases, like both are marginalized, but within the tribal areas, are there scheduled castes? And within that, like how does the law, because as you said, the law doesn't allow transfer of land from tribal to non-tribal, so scheduled castes are considered non-tribals, I imagine. And then, so we have like
so scheduled castes are considered non-tribal, but they can't transfer land either. And there is a non-trivial percentage of tribals within the assigned land holding community. So for instance, Polepalli, a dominant number of the people who committed suicides are actually tribals. So it's a very interesting sort of application of assigned lands to the tribe. So Telangana has had some weird sort of applications of assignment, and tribals have been the beneficiaries. And so that's the reason why I think tribals are also affected by this poor property right that's created for them.
So just so I have this right in my head.
Right.
So the land transfer prohibition law applies in the scheduled areas.
Right.
The assigned land laws, assignment of land, that operates generally in Andhra Pradesh.
Correct.
But assigned lands can be given not just to scheduled castes but also to tribals.
To tribals.
But outside of the scheduled areas, can the tribals transfer the assigned land, or is that prohibited by the assigned?
It's prohibited.
It is also prohibited. So it affects both tribals
and because
scheduled
it is prohibited, and because it's a weak property right, when the government takes over the land, they find a perverse logic of justifying a lower compensation to them.
I see.
So a non-assigned landholder ends up getting, say, 60 to 70,000 rupees per acre, whereas somebody who has been assigned a land because it's a weaker right, gets about 15,000 rupees, and is expected not to complain because it was given to them to begin with. That's the sort of the.
And is that also a crime? We said that Act 1 of 1970 made
Under
the LTR.
Prohibition of Assigned Lands Act, it's a crime.
Also a crime, okay.
One more point I want to add to the question that you have put to Mr. Pawan. Some of the tribal lands are under occupation of SCs in scheduled areas, and there is an undeclared policy. They can't declare it because it is against law. There is an undeclared policy that if scheduled caste person is holding less than 10 acres of tribal land, they will not touch him. It's an undeclared policy.
Yeah. The issue about the dam and the mine, the role of MOTA. MOTA is in Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Yeah, Ministry of Tribal Affairs is new, and they're trying to do their best, I guess. Their point is that the powers, because the portfolio was with the Home Ministry, and when it got transferred or when this new ministry was created, all those powers under the Home Ministry have not been transferred to these people. That is their official point of view. Well, I have also applied under RTI to the Home Ministry asking what are the powers and what did you transfer and what is still with you. Anyway, that's another story.
It will come to me.
Yeah, it will. It will. Eventually it will. So, then coming to the dam and the mine, it was such that Rahul Gandhi had visited Niyamgiri and spent a few nights with the Adivasis there. And the Congress party and the media made a big show about it. And in some meeting I mentioned that, our tribals are also cons, and why is he having a stepmotherly attitude or stepfatherly attitude or brotherly, whatever, So now this was picked up by the media somewhere, and I think his office got I think they do some tracking of where all Rahul's name comes every day. So this came up, and so we got a call from his office to my office saying Rahul Gandhi wants to meet Ravi. He said, is it true? I mean, is it from Rahul Gandhi's office? Yeah, it is from Rahul Gandhi. Anyway, I came here, met him. So I told him the same thing. I said, if you don't come to Andhra, it is obvious that Andhra is a Congress government and BJD, the Orissa is a BJD government. So you have issues of settlement, and so therefore you are not visiting Andhra because the situation is same, the law is the same, and everything is the same. So that being the background, the dam, you see, all this revolves around one late Rajshekhar Reddy, one chief minister. So he pushed. It's one dam in the world that already has, I think, 80% of its canals made, and the dam is not made. So Rajshekhar Reddy pushed a lot of these things beyond, I mean, so much beyond that actually the National Environment Appellate Authority the first time cancelled the EC of a dam. That was Polavaram. So, well, they did some legal something and they kind of stalled that process. And then Rajshekhar Reddy came to the court, or the government of AP came to the Supreme Court and said, because our contention was it involves Orissa and Andhra and Chhattisgarh. So as per the environment public hearing was held only in Andhra and not in Orissa and Chhattisgarh. So on those grounds, we got the EC squashed. So then the government of AP came to the court and said, we will build a retaining wall with 600 crores. We will not allow the water to go into Orissa and Chhattisgarh. I mean, it's an absurd thing. I don't know if you understand that Polavaram is a earthen dam. It's only going to be an earthen dam like Teri. And so naturally the water will spread to wherever it has to spread. Now he's saying that where, say, Shastri Saab's hand is there, he will build a wall. So how does the water from the other side come in and how does this go in? So we said, you're changing the design of the whole dam. So you have to go in for a EC again. So actually right now activities are going on illegally. So whenever the contractors have money or whatever, it's a big milking cow. You see, around 2005 October, when the public hearing was held, there was this thing called mobilization grant.
Advance.
It's like huge contract, some 500, 600 crores is given to you as to start the work. And then there will be a monthly billing or a weekly billing or a 15-day billing. So what happened is that, suppose I am the contractor, I take these 600 crores from the government and I put this into the market. And I call the smaller contractors, give them a few vehicles and equipment and say, you start the work. And within a week you will get the payment because, well, that's the system. So the 600 crores or whatever, this money doesn't just go into the project. So this kind of came out into the market and the land prices everywhere went crazy in our time, in that time. So as we see, Polavaram construction has been illegal and it's a very complicated case. They have about 14 to 18 cases so far. Now Orissa government has filed a case, Chhattisgarh government has filed a case, Andhra government has filed a case. So many of our members like Sridhar and others, we are in, like we are also confused now. Which side are we? We are like, so because the Orissa government wants us to be with them because we are opposing the dam. So the AP government filed something. So it's like a real quagmire, but the activities are going on.
And it becomes a national project.
It is a national project.
It becomes a national project in division.
And it adds on to my presentation where I showed you the PCPIR corridor and all these industries. The Polavaram Dam will supply water to all these people. And the citizens of North Andhra, coastal Andhra, will be forced to go in for desalination. That is the plan. So therefore, here the Tribal Welfare Minister, who is our MP from Araku, will have an interest in Polavaram Dam. And his interest in bauxite might be different. So in bauxite, the issue is tribal rights and, APMDC and what Sridhar said about the government not following the Samta judgment. It is APMDC actually in the tribal areas. So APMDC. So we are challenging that very issue now, saying what right does APMDC have to take the lease and then give it to the Jindals or to X and Y? Why can't it be that the tribal society there itself gets the lease and they transfer it? See, the government will anyway get its royalty and whatnot. So it should not be really bothered whether it is a tribal, whatever, it's figure, I mean, it's like a concept, but it's being accepted now slowly. And let's see, so the reason the mining has stopped is because of these various aspects. And the Polavaram Dam has continued. Here also Rajshekar Reddy was involved. But, well, luckily, well, I think the connection somehow got cut. The Polavaram still continues because those guys are quite big and many, many more. And here in the bauxite thing, there's only one person, which is one Pratap Reddy, who owns Penna Cements, who's also now in that soup of Lakshmi Narayana. All these people are being, pulled up in that. It's all a part of the Jagan case, that is assets which are disproportionate to known sources of income.
You might want to make a film of this whole thing, just in case you...
Yeah, like Fas Gaye Re Obama. I heard there was a movie like that.
I'll provide some more clarification on this. Mr. Ravi is a little hesitant in giving that because he is from that MP's area. The problem is in Jindal, that bauxite mining area, the present contractors were in the Jagan Mohan Reddy's camp. Whereas in the Polavaram, 18,000 crore are in the present government's camp. So there is the objection to bauxite, legal objection. Same legal objection is not extended here. The second aspect is that is we were discussing also. When Telangana was declared, Polavaram as a national project was also declared. Some people say that submergence of a scheduled area in exchange of a separate state. Is it justifiable? That is another angle. So it's a political decision where we cannot give any clarification on issues, solve equations of groups.
Can I just say that that is fascinating, and I've been asked this question by several participants as to why we selected the 3 states that we've selected for this project. And one of the reason was to ensure diversity. And with diversity, we wanted some geographical diversity. We wanted 5th scheduled states, 6th scheduled states. But we also wanted, because one of the goals of the project is to study federal-state relations and regional political coalitions. And Kavita is more invested in that work. And the idea of selecting Gujarat was a state which has been BJP ruled for a while with a Congress government at the center, Andhra Congress, and then we had Meghalaya, and we also had Tripura, which is the only state which has a CPM government. And it's very interesting, and it seems like if you want to get a project stopped, then you just better hope that your state government is not a Congress government and Rahul Gandhi happens to come and spend some time with your tribals.
I thought your choice was based on increasing levels of corruption. Creative corruption.
I had a question for Mr. Sridhar, and of course anybody else. It seems the governance issue, which is very real, there's no doubt about that. But the underlying problem seems to be the mismatch between supply and demand of land. And the governance problem is being asked to resolve an increasingly serious economic mismatch between what is available, that is the amount of land available for anything, and that is not available. That is because there's a mismatch. Obviously, there's a mismatch. Some people want to buy, some people want to sell, but their numbers, in terms of numbers and in terms of the area involved, is never anywhere near meeting the, balancing the two. So in that environment, governance failure seems to be virtually built in. Because if you have this kind of a supply-demand mismatch, the scale of it, given that we are talking of real estate, I mean, it'll be, I'll be surprised if governance can at all be delivered in that kind of a situation. So shouldn't we actually think of that if we really want this governance problem to be dealt with, then we need to figure out why is land, doesn't matter, because you said that, we are not just talking of the scheduled areas, but in general as well. Then how do we make more land on the market? So like he said, the community-based involvement in the market process can work and reduce this gap between supply and demand. And then the governance might have some chance of actually delivering what we are looking for.
Supply and demand theory and the way you have presented the issue is fine in general. But I don't think it will apply to tribal lands where they are very weak and they are being flooded by grabbers. They do not know anything, and they have a right to live, and their livelihood and basis is land. It is not as if there is no land available everywhere, and they have to take necessarily the land of tribals. It is not that case. You are going there to make your own profits. You want to grab. You want to make more money. Your greed, not need. Your greed cannot be brought into the scope of need and supply. I don't think so. Then what do you govern? If you leave everything to demand and supply, why the government? Why the law? Why the regulation? Where is the protection for the weaker sections? What kind of a protection you constitutionally offer to these tribals? You want them to go back into deep forests and cut the forests again? No, you want the degradation of forests and environmental problem too? Where do you end up? What is governance if that is the case? What is the governance? Do you have an obligation to protect these persons or not? Will you leave it to the market? That's my question.
So, if I may add to that, so one of the potential ways that one can alleviate this problem, this intractable problem, is perhaps give a stake to future cash flows to tribals. I think Samatha in some sense captures the essence of getting them interest. I think Kerala government has done something like that. They've floated, I think, industrial bonds for people whose lands are taken over. Maybe some creative solutions such as that can partially alleviate the problem. Because so if you do decide to take over people's lands, just don't get rid of them on the basis of a certain quantum of money which can be quickly expended and then leave them in a worse off position than they were earlier. But actually give them a continued interest in the property rather than leave them out in the lurch. That's my sort of sense.
Yeah, I forgot to continue that point that MMDR Act and the bill and how finally we did go in front of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, we have given our thing, where they initially agreed for a stake. When Mr. Handik was the minister, they initially agreed for a stake. And later on, after our Montek Singh got in and Femi and others got in, they have now finally reduced it to a 26% profit to a district mineral fund from coal companies and 100% royalty to the district mineral fund from non-coal companies. We are still opposed to the district mineral fund, but when you consider it is something like, if I may say, after AAP, here I'm not saying for or against any party, but I'm just saying that after AAP's cap, vote for Modi cap has come, no? So it is like, when I just leave it there. The point is that you have seen somebody do something, so therefore, okay, you are aping it, which is fair enough. So like that, when there is nothing, when you argued about FRA, it's the same argument here that since 92, when I am fighting the Birlas and the Borra caves and others, and till now we still have those minerals there. We have not allowed them to take it. And the whole dilemma every day for us is, what do we do with this? The question that comes from the community, from the young people, is that we will mine. The older people did not want to mine, so we could hold it very easily. But as the roads have been laid and everything is there, now motorcycles have come, mobile phones have come, the contractors, see, you and me might go to the village when there's a crisis, but the contractors are there every morning. They are enticing the youth. They are saying, हम तुमको मोटरसाइकिल देगा, ये देखो मोबाइल फोन ले लो, ये 30,000 वाला है, हमको खाली एक फोन करो यहाँ से. So they are slowly getting these young fellows into actually Joda Badbil. Recently we were there. There's one Tamilian who's a mafia. He's a big time transport. He controls the entire mining areas of Orissa because he's the guy who has this heavy transport. Now he has this policy. Unemployment allowance deta hai. It is called unemployment allowance. So all youth who are of that age, who have nothing, whistle maro to aayenge, you are a batch. How many people? 25. Okay, your scene is this. Come every Saturday, collect this money and go. No work. We'll tell you if there is any work. Because dissent. Slowly the tribal youth are saying, we will mine. Why are you looting? Hum hi loot karenge na. So in my place also, it has come to that, and very interestingly, APMDC finally came to us recently because we've been stopping this calcite mine for the last, 15 years. And every contractor who comes, puts in some money, gets his fingers burnt and runs away. So now APMDC has come and said, what should we do? I said, thank you, you have come. We want 40, if you're taking 100 lorries from here, pay 40 lorries at the gate. Then your 100 lorries will be left. Otherwise, we will not allow the stock to go. So it has come back to this, where now the contractor has come and says, if you can tell me how to implement the Samta judgment, I am ready. I have already put in 5 crores, I am lost. So if you can show me a way, I will recover my 5 crores and also give whatever you want for the people. So it has taken, if you see, 20 years or 22 years, for a localized situation where they are saying, okay, we will share benefits now. Because they understand that they cannot take it. I mean, everybody will not get that kind of protection which POSCO is getting or something. Those are some prestigious projects. These are small guys. And if the tribal just shoot one arrow, they are dead. So where is the investment? Where is the business? Nothing. So therefore, ultimately it is a negotiation. And we are also a little careful, but what do we do? What do we tell the youth? We are unable to stop them anymore. They want to mine. So ultimately, it is that property or the resource is yours, and there is somebody with some investment. You guys sit down, settle some settlement. There are 3-4 contractors in those 4 districts who are now saying we will implement this Samta judgment. But well, we have to consider whether we get into it or not, because once we say yes, then we have a problem.